Alexei Nikolaevich, the last heir apparent of the Russian royal empire, was born a hemophiliac. He inherited the disease from his mother Alexandra, who was merely a carrier. Alexandra acquired these traits and these genes from her maternal grandmother, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom. To extend their lineage and to keep their line pure and their hold on the royal thrones, royal families usually arranged marriages between close cousins and siblings. This sort of inbreeding and incestuous relationships can result in genetic disorders in which a bad copy of a recessive allele is passed on. As a result, Alexei had a lifelong history of suffering from hemophilia. Hemophiliacs can't stop bleeding because their blood can't form clotting factors. A simple cut or a bruise can potentially kill them simply because they can't stop bleeding. So great care was taken to prohibit Alexei from horseplay or anything that can cause injury to him. Alright, let's do some Punnett square analysis of hemophilia. So hemophilia, I've just decided to assign the capital letter H as normal, and lowercase h is recessive, so you do have hemophilia. And remember, this is a sex-linked trait, so it will disproportionately affect males more than females. So his mom was an XX. She was a carrier, so that means she has one little h. You can see it there. So she's a carrier. She did not have hemophilia. She didn't display it, but she carried the trait for it. His dad was a normal male, so unafflicted. So X to the capital H and then Y, because XY is male. So now we're going to fill in the Punnett square here to see what the odds are. So they can have a girl who is completely normal, so hemophilia free. So X big H would mean you are a normal female. Okay, and we're going to continue this analysis here. So you can also have a female who's a carrier of this disease. So X big H, X little h. This means you are a carrier female. So it's not like you're doomed to hemophilia if you're a female, because you would actually need two of those little h's. Okay, which is why females tend to be carriers and they don't display the trait or the disease, because they have one good copy, one big H on that X chromosome. Males, on the other hand, okay, so this son, they could potentially have a son who is normal. Okay, so that's X big H and then Y. So that means you're a normal male. So you got lucky in the gene pool. You don't have hemophilia. Okay, obviously they only had one son, and then this is the one I'm drawing in into this box right here. This is Prince Alexei. So X little h and then Y. So there's no extra chromosome to offset this right here. So that's why Alexei had hemophilia, because his genotype was X to the little h and then Y. So this means you are an afflicted male. So looking at this Punnett square here, okay, just to give you a summary, if mom is a carrier like Alexandra, and then dad is normal like Tsar Nicholas II, these are the odds. So if you're born a male, there's a 50% chance that you're normal and a 50% chance that you're afflicted. If you're born female XX, there's a 50% chance that you're normal and then 50% chance that you're a carrier. But there's a 0% chance that if you're female, you are afflicted because you have an extra X chromosome. Alexei's 4 other sisters were not afflicted by hemophilia. However, it was unknown if they were carriers of the disease because they were never married and didn't have children. They didn't have a chance to do this because the entire Russian royal family was overthrown and murdered by the Bolsheviks during the Russian Revolution. We're going to do some pedigree analysis for hemophilia using the European royal families. So if you are a circle, that means you're a female. And if you're shaded in, you're a carrier for this disease. So Queen Victoria is the person who passed on this disease to Prince Alexei. If you're a box or a square, that means you're a male. If it's clear, that means you're unafflicted. But if you are shaded in, like Alexis down here, okay, that's the boy pictured, that means you are hemophilic. Okay, so remember that this disease disproportionately affects males. Okay, females are usually carriers, but they don't display the disease. So the very top of this pedigree represents Queen Victoria and her husband, and together they had 7 to 8 children. Okay, I mean, it's 7 in generation 2, and then it extends because they ran out of room on this pedigree. Okay, but you can see each of her children down there. She had quite a few. And one of her sons was actually afflicted. So Leopold had this disease, okay, which is why he is shaded in on this pedigree. And one of her daughters, Alice, was a carrier of hemophilia. So there she is. We're going to circle her, and hers is shaded in already. But I'm just pointing out just some of the main ideas on this pedigree, the important points. Okay, so Queen Victoria's granddaughter, Alexandra, was also a carrier of this disease. Okay, Alexandra, we discussed her earlier. She was Alexei's mom. And Alexandra was married to Nicholas II of Russia. And together they had 5 children. Alexei was the only boy. Okay, remember the other 4 girls were Alexei's sisters, and they all have question marks because they didn't have children. Remember, they were murdered off, and we don't know their genotypes. Okay, the only thing we know is that they weren't afflicted with a disease, but we don't know they were carriers of it. Okay, so that's in the 4th generation, and you can see Alexei inherited this disease. And like many of the other males in this family, he had hemophilia. Okay, quite a few of them. A lot of the males actually had this disease in this family. And you can all trace it back to Queen Victoria. Okay, so Alexei's in the 4th generation, Queen Victoria is in the 1st generation. So you can trace Alexei's hemophilia all the way back to his great-great-grandmother. Here, you can take one of these colorblindness tests. Usually they just test for your ability to distinguish between red and green. So if you can see that number in there, that means you're not colorblind. Okay, so let's try another one. I can see the number 3. I'm not colorblind, so I can see all these numbers here. Okay, and I'll explain what colorblindness is in just a moment, but I can clearly see the red and the green hues. Okay, that looks like an 8. That looks like a 4. That's a 3. Also a 3. And that's a 1. That's a 9. And that's a 9. Okay, so this is a typical colorblind test, and it's available online. Colorblindness is a sex-linked trait, so it's your inability to distinguish between red and green. You can see on the color wheel to the left, that's normal color vision, so you can see all the colors of the rainbow just fine. But there's 2 types of colorblindness. One is called protanopia, the other is called deuteranopia, and you can see how their color wheels look slightly strange. You can't really distinguish between red and green, so together it looks like the color yellow or like a murky brown. Your blues you can actually see just fine, okay, if you're colorblind, but you can think of colorblindness as more like color confusion. It's a misconception that people who are colorblind see things in black and white. They can see colors, they just can't distinguish between red and green. And this colorblindness tends to affect males disproportionately, just like hemophilia. So the males only have 1 X chromosome, so if you receive that recessive allele, that means you're afflicted with colorblindness. Females, on the other hand, they need 2 bad copies, they need 2 recessive alleles, and this is very uncommon. So females tend to be carriers, males tend to be afflicted disproportionately, which means it's more common in males. So you can see in the image to the left, that represents normal color vision, and then the image to the right, it's the same picture, but you really can't tell what color the lady's dress might be because your red and your green get confused. So if you're colorblind, you really can't distinguish between the two colors, and instead it just looks like a murky yellow. So far, you've been learning about traits that are all or nothing. So, for example, hemophilia, in the case of Prince Alexei, is an all or nothing. You either have it or you don't. But there are also other patterns of inheritance that are found in nature. So, the first is called incomplete dominance, which means it's like a blending of traits. So, for example, if you cross a red flower, a red rose, with a white rose, you end up getting pink. That is known as incomplete dominance. The other type of inheritance is called codominance. So both traits are exhibited at once. So if you take a red rose and a white rose, you end up getting red and white spots. It's like freckles almost. That's what it looks like. There are hundreds of traits and disorders which you can all study with pedigree analysis and Punnett squares. So just to name a few: human eye color, hair texture. If your earlobes are attached or unattached, you can study diseases like hemophilia, disorders like colorblindness, or even Huntington's disease using these strategies in biology that we have. So Punnett squares shows us how sex-linked traits disproportionately affect males. Males tend to be afflicted because they only have one X chromosome, so if they receive a bad copy of that allele on their X chromosome, usually they're afflicted. However, females can offset this because they have two X chromosomes, so that means they have to inherit two bad copies. So the only way for females to be afflicted is if mom and dad are colorblind, or if mom and dad are both hemophiliacs, which is extremely rare. So females tend to be carriers and males are afflicted. That does it for Win Biology. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Mendelian genetics, Punnett squares, and pedigree analysis. I will see you next time on Win Biology.